All right, we were in Exodus 25 is where this Torah portion begins. And I'm starting and people are leaving. I don't know how I feel about that. Should I be insecure?
They'll be back.
I wouldn't be.
Thank you there, Debbie. Appreciate that. I feel so much better now.
Oh, good, good. Glad I could help.
Absent is never gone.
In any event, so here's a question. If you wanted to travel into outer space or you wanted to go down to the bottom of the ocean, how would you do it? What would you have to do in order to go out into outer space or go down to the very bottom?
Have a vessel that's capable of it.
A vessel that's capable of it? What else?
Proper clothing,
Like what? What kind of proper clothing?
scuba gear,
A bathing suit? I think you would need a little bit more than a bathing suit to go all the way down to the bottom.
kind of like a helmet and
Okay.
stuff so you can breathe.
Submarine would be nice.
Yes, it would be.
So you've got, what's funny is you look at a space suit and a diving suit
They look the same.
are almost exactly the same. Yeah, because they both have to protect the person on the inside, right? You have to, in a space station, a submarine essentially is working the same way. They require you to take a little bit of your home with you in order to be there and survive, right? Because what happens if you get a hole in your suit or in your submarine or whatever, or in your space station?
You have a holy suit.
No air.
You what's that?
You have a holy suit.
You have a holy suit. Yes, it is holy, 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 and I didn't survive. So, and that's actually not too far from the truth.
It actually could be crushed because of the weight of the water and the atmosphere coming
Exactly.
in on you.
Exactly. At the bottom of the ocean, you would be crushed.
Yeah.
Out in space, you would kind of explode from the inside. But it's just different ways. So this portion describes, the Mishkan, the Tabernacle, where God is essentially setting up a place on earth where he can come and dwell. It's like an embassy on earth. He's stepping out of heaven, and he's stepping out of that heaven, which is an environment which is perfectly well suited for his presence, into an environment that how suited is this world full of sin for his presence.
Not good at all.
It's not the best fit. There would be some conflict, to say the least, with his glory and his presence here on earth, because this world is corrupted. It is hostile to him, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So we have that issue. So this Mishkan functions almost like a space station for him, a small environment in which he can live and move. But you think about, do most of these types of things, what is safe for him is oftentimes dangerous for something accustomed to the other environment. You think about that? Like, a deep sea fish. If you're down at the bottom of the ocean and you bring a deep sea fish into your place and you bring it up to the surface, what happens?
It explodes.
It'll die. The environment in which it lives is not suited for where we live. And so, you think about this. What is the purpose of the Mishkan, the tabernacle of God? Yes?
Well, the children of Israel said, okay, we know there's God. Send Moses to show us, to tell us, and we'll hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then later they said, we will do.
Mm-hmm.
But Moses had to be the example for Israel that you could approach a holy God and come back.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it has to be Jesus or Yeshua that goes to the Father.
You're skipping about like 6 to 8 points ahead here.
I'm saying a lot of times we focus on the pattern
Mm-hmm.
instead of the purpose for the pattern. And then you've got Moses that showed Israel, like Yeshua shows us, that it's about the relationship and it starts from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So what is the purpose of the tabernacle, of the Mishkan?
Intentional relationship.
Okay. He gives us some indications from here in this passage. Exodus 25, verse 8. Have them make a sanctuary for me, and its purpose, so that he might be able to dwell among his people. It's a place for him. It's that little place of heaven, so to speak, where his presence can reside. Because what usually happens when God's presence shows up in a certain location?
People are drawn to it.
Repentance.
People are drawn to it, yes.
Repentance.
There's a burning bush type of thing that happens, right? It burns, but it's not consumed. What happens to the Mount Sinai when God shows up there?
Caught on fire.
Burns.
Yeah, there's great cloud and fire and scorching of the mountain.
It's amazing
Right.
if people repulse from that one.
They were pretty threatened by that and intimidated by that. So his presence is oftentimes overwhelming to even potentially damaging. Now that's the miracle of the burning bush, is that it was on fire, but it was not consumed. But here you have this great event, and it's, from all indication of it, it would be very destructive, right? You see something similar, this great presence of his in Acts chapter 2 with Pentecost and such, where you see this mighty rushing wind and fire, right? So when he shows up at a place, it's oftentimes a pretty big deal, to say the least. But is that how it originally happened? When God shows up, when he showed up back in the garden, when he was walking with Adam and Eve, did he have to show up in this great cloud of fire and wind and thunder and all that other kind of stuff?
No.
No.
He didn't
They
have
were
to
on
break
his level.
in.
He didn't have to break in, right.
But he had to.
The environment in the garden was suitable for him to be able to come in without all of the,
Fanfare.
yeah, if you want to call it that, but without all of the conflict of environment, so to speak.
Even though Satan was present.
Even though somehow or another, yeah, he comes in and starts to mess things up. But before that happened, God could come in and walk and talk with them and dwell with them in the cool of the day. There was no indication, at least, of a blast of wind or fire, or cloud. There's no conflict between this world at the time and his presence, because there was no sin, there was no death that violated his holiness. Now again, that changed.
It's almost like walking with your dad. You know, your father,
Mm-hmm.
you're going about your business, and then he comes in the evening and he talks with you, and I mean, you know, it's just like,
Mhm.
it's a different kind of relationship.
Sure it is. But he says here, have them make this sanctuary for me so that I may dwell among us. It's a place to meet with him. You know, that's one of the things that he says. It's a place for him, and it's a place for us to meet with him. We need that, because what would the glory of and the holiness of his presence in heaven, you know, it's a place for us to meet with him. What would that do to us if we were in his glory? Would we survive?
In his glory,
It says the
if
Amen has seen.
we weren't.
We would not survive.
No.
Just like, you know, the fish taken from the bottom up to the surface, it would kill it. His presence is not safe for us. Were we to meet him without some kind of protection, we would die. So the dwelling with us without destroying us is one of the purposes of the Mishkan. Okay, verse 22 goes into that. You know, then, because this opens up communication. Once he's able to dwell with us, then we're able to communicate with one another. So he said, I will meet with you there. I will speak with you from above the atonement cover, from between the two cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, about all that I will command you for Bnei Yisrael. So he says, he's going to dwell among us, but he wants to meet with us there, right? So we can meet without him destroying us, and he will speak to us from that place. This is, when you think about the submarine or the space station, how big are the windows which they can look out?
They're small.
With all of that clash of environments in there, the place where you actually get to see and come face to face with something down there is small, and you're like sticking your head in there trying to look through to see what it's all about. This Mishkan provides the link and this line of communication between the Father and his children. And it's more than just a cell phone signal type of thing, where this long distance signal from one phone bounces off a satellite and comes around and eventually makes it to the other phone. This is an embassy. This is a place where a small piece of his world, so to speak, resides in ours. And if you don't take that very seriously, if you don't take his presence, a small part of his world here among us, if you don't take that seriously, it will kill you. Because it operates with a different set of rules than where you live. Does that make sense? What were you saying, dear? You keep that to yourself? Is that it? Tell me later?
You know what's interesting though too is that like Paul and the different people, when they went to heaven, they were always in the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Because they could not, their mortal bodies could never.
It was not a natural
Where our spirit,
visit.
that's where we came from, so maybe
Right.
that's part of it.
So this is a place, this is what he is doing. What does the Mishkan, what does it reveal about the heart of God? What can you learn? What does this tabernacle tell us?
He has a love to be with us.
It tells about his desire, just that basic heart hunger and thirst, just to be close.
It also tells about judgment, or there wouldn't be blood and sacrifice.
We'll get there. But the basic desire is that I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want there to be this division. He actually does want to be close to us. He hates the distance that our sin has created. He hates that separation. You think about husbands and wives that are in the military. They call and look at a camera, and hopefully, these days anyway, they would rather have the person there than have to see him on TV, right? Can you imagine how it would be like, and I thought about this, if you think of a husband that's exposed to a poison or a biohazard or radiation at work, and he gets sent to the hospital, right? What do the doctors, the aides, and the guards have to do when his wife finally shows up to be there with him?
She has to wear all this gear,
What do they have to do first before they start putting the clothes on her?
decontaminate her.
No, not her. She's not the one that's
I
exposed.
know, but she could carry something.
Mm-mm. They typically have to restrain her from just going straight in there
Yeah, they wouldn't be.
automatically, right? Her first inclination is, I don't care what happened to him, I'm going in there, right? I should hope so, right, dear?
Yes.
So that's the first thing that they typically have to do, is hold them back. When there's something hurt, when there's something broken, when there's something, a problem, the wife, the husband, the parents typically have to be held back from rushing in to be close to their loved one. And that's essentially where we're at here with all of this. You think about parents whose children have made bad decisions and they've resulted in them going to prison, right? And you get to see them, but they're on the other side of a glass wall. How hard is that? It's pretty hard. So here he is. He is creating in the middle, in the midst of their camp, where they are all around them. He is the heart of their camp, is what this is supposed to be. A small equivalent of what he had in the Garden of Eden, a place where he will be able to be and walk among his people. That's what his desire is. I want to be right in the middle of all that you are. I want to be at your heart. But what happened, when sin was introduced, when they were expelled from the Garden of Eden, what kept them from going back? What's that?
The angels.
Their sin.
Right.
Their sin.
Their sin kept him from going back, you'd think. But he put up a guard, didn't he, to say, lest they come back and eat of the fruit of the tree of life. Right? So there was a guard, that flaming sword that separates us from the garden, right? Is it for the garden's protection?
No, it's
Was it for our protection?
No.
Right? Because if they did go back, and if they did eat of the fruit of the tree of life, if I can speak today, then they would do what? They would live forever
In their sin.
in that sinful, broken state. And that would be even worse. Death, in this sense, is an improvement over living forever in eternity in sin. All right? With death, we at least have the possibility of redemption. Does that make sense? So, but in order for us, if you think about this, what would you have to do if you were going to try to get past that flaming sword into his presence? Would it be pretty hard to sneak past the guard? Right? I mean, have you seen all those people that have tried to jump the fence at the White House and get into the president?
Don't make it very far.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they make it farther than we'd like. I mean, I remember reading one of those reports a year or so ago where a guy made it to the back door or the side door and was starting to go into the house. They're not supposed to make it that far before the guards take them down. But in order to get past the flaming sword, you have to have certain things to gain that kind of access. Right? It's the reverse, or it's the opposite of, if y'all ever, we've done this before, one of those escape rooms. Y'all ever done any of those before? You know the concept? It's like an activity game where you go into this first room and it's like a maze. You have to make your way through. But in order to make your way through all of those things, you have to solve certain clues or get certain items to unlock the next door to go on. You have to have certain items to get out, essentially. It's like you're trying to get out of this place where you're put. Here, you have to have certain items to get in, as far as the tabernacle of God. The problem is that, there is sin in our camp. There's sin in the human heart, and God, because of His holiness, cannot dwell where that sin is. So the mechanism to remove that problem is this system that the Mishkan reveals. Whoops, that's too far. It's that sacrificial system. It's the vessels of the tabernacle. Because one, to paraphrase a certain movie, one does not simply walk into the presence of God. Right? You can't just simply walk in casual whenever you feel like doing it. There is a veil that separates us from them. That's something that you see in Exodus chapter 26. He says, you are to hang the curtain under the clasp and bring the ark within the curtain of the testimony. The perchet, the veil, will divide for you between the holy place and the Holy of Holies. The further you go in, the more dangerous it becomes. Does that make sense? The further you go in, the more dangerous it becomes. Because you think about, what is the purpose of the veil? Is it to protect God from us?
No.
Protect us from God.
Once again, it's to protect us. It's for our benefit that the veil is there.
Yeah, they had to go in every day to make sure the lamps were lit.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was
Yeah.
to show bread.
But the veil, essentially, it functions. The veil functions. What happened when Moses asked to see the glory of God up on the mountain?
He hit him in the cleft of the rock.
The veil acts like the hand that was put over Moses so the glory could pass by and then he lifted it just a little bit so Moses could see what?
His back.
The fading of that glory. His backside is, I think,
Do you imagine that he saw the stripes on his back?
it's hard to say.
Oh.
We don't have a good description of it.
He showed him a lot when he was up there.
But yeah, the veil functions like that hand that hit him in the cleft of the rock, because you and I, in our state right now, cannot see the fullness of the Father's glory and live. And so, so many times we speculate on the veil and why the veil was torn at the death of Yeshua. And some of them are pretty good. I mean, y'all have heard all sorts of different explanations.
There was more than one veil.
I understand, but I mean the one from the Holy of Holies, the really thick certain thing that was torn from top to bottom,
For speculation.
right? That's what the scriptures say. There's all sorts of reasons why. I mean, there's songs about it. Mercy came running. Some of these other types of things that you hear, that the talking about the veil being torn as if someone would be in grief, right?
From the top down.
From the top down, and so it's like a grief kind of moment when someone you love dies, and such as that. You hear all that. I think we'll get a better answer later on. It reveals the heart of God in just a little while, because everything given when you're in Exodus 25, everything given that follows is God's way of ensuring our survival in His presence. That's what all of the utensils are for. That's what all the pieces and the parts of the tabernacle are for. Because how can He be in the midst of the camp and leave sin unaddressed? And these are all of the instructions about how to love and worship God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. How can we, in our broken state, endure Him truly living in the midst of us, in our heart?
The blood of His Son.
Hmm?
The blood of His Son.
There, we'll get there, because we can go into a whole lot of great detail about each item and what it does and how it helps. But I want to hit something a little bit different, because so many of our our brothers and sisters in Christ, some will argue that this was for them so long ago. It doesn't really change anything for my walk with God now. After all, I have the Holy Spirit dwelling in me now, right? Isn't that true? But for those that say that, I believe sometimes we underestimate the lengths to which the Father had to go, and the lengths that He went in order to make that miracle happen. To have the Holy Spirit dwelling inside your heart, and dwelling in the center of who you are, we underestimate what that cost and what it took to make that happen. Because He either had to cleanse your heart, your camp essentially, of sin, entirely of sin, or He had to provide a sacrifice to cover your sin until all of creation is fully restored and redeemed. Right? Now, do we still have sin in our lives, even as believers? Yes. So the first option is kind of out, isn't it? That we're not completely devoid of sin. So that leaves the second option, which is that He provides a sacrifice to cover our sin until everything is fully restored. See, even the redeemed people of Israel still had sin in their camp and in their hearts, and so do we. And all of the items of the tabernacle spell out the gospel, spell out the ministry, the work of Yeshua that makes the dwelling presence of His Spirit possible. Because it's not just something that happens in the past, it's also about our future, because everything that Moses did in building the tabernacle, building the Mishkan, is based on a pattern of something that's greater, and something that is also real and true. He says, you are to make it all precisely according to everything I show you. Moses is shown something else, and he says, I want you to make it like this. All right? Verse 40, he says, see to it. See that you make them according to their pattern being shown to you on the mountain. I think this is more than just blueprints that he's getting to see. Chapter 26, you are to raise up the tabernacle according to the plan which you were shown on the mountain. So it's reinforcing that idea that the Father was showing him something that already existed. He gets his instructions for the tabernacle by being shown this thing that already exists, already has been built in some form or fashion, something that Yeshua has a personal hand in. And we see that starting in Hebrews. He says, now here is the main point being said. We do have such a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, who has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of majesty in the heavens. He is a priestly attendant of the holies and the true tent, which Adonai set up, not man. So is there a holy of holies? Is there a tabernacle, a true tent in existence?
In heaven,
Yes.
his dwelling place.
It exists there. It is the true thing, and it's something which the Lord himself made. Yes, Gabriel.
Well, couldn't you say that that's heaven in and of itself? You know, because the Holy of Holies, you know, is his throne room, we say, and then the Holies is his dwelling place, and the courtyard is where we all come in to dwell. So I mean,
There are all sorts of speculation about what exactly that takes. Is it the entirety of heaven, or is it a special place within, just kind of designating these things? So, and it's hard to give a distinct answer for that. But, you know, it says, here is the main point. We do have such a high priest. Now, of course, what kind of high priest was he? It says, we have such a high priest. A Kohen Gadol was fitting for us. He is holy. He is guiltless, undefiled, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. That's back in chapter 7. All right?
Can't get higher than that.
Yeah. He offered sacrifices once for all, you know, in the true tent, which Adonai set up and not man. So the tabernacle, the Mishkan of Moses, is not the true tent of God's presence. It's what we were able to experience here. But he cleansed that tabernacle up, you know, in that sense, with his own blood. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. But it says, in talking about the priesthood that's here at this place, at the tabernacle here, or the temple that's here, it says they offer service in a replica and a foreshadower of the heavenlies. One that is just as Moses was instructed by God. I mean, did he do it right? Did he build it right according to the pattern? Absolutely he did. It was just as Moses was instructed by God when he was about to complete the tabernacle, for he says, see that you make everything according to the design that was shown to you on the mountain. All right, so he's doing it right.
I think if he hadn't, then Yahweh would have been able to come down.
Or it would have not been as compatible a situation. It would have been destructive for Moses, for the people, if they didn't take this seriously. So this one, you know, this tabernacle, this Mishkan, even the temple, is a replica, a copy, or an example. And it's that definition is a sign suggestive of anything, delineating of a thing, representation, a figure, or a copy, an example for imitation. All right, that term foreshadower is an image cast by an object and representing the form of that object, a sketch, an outline of these things. The things that exist in or take place in heaven is another way of translating that word. Things that exist in or take place in heaven. So here is what they offer service in this pattern of this replica of what exists up there. Chapter 9 says, now even the first one had regulations for worship and the earthly sanctuary. Right? Why were the regulations necessary?
Protect them.
Again, it's a matter of protection. If you don't do this right, it'll kill you. All right? If you want to go down to the bottom of the ocean, what happens if you come up too fast?
It depends.
Yeah,
It
it'll
depends.
you get what's called the bends,
And then you can die.
where all of those gases in your bloodstream begin to bubble out, and it will kill you. So if you don't come up from the bottom at the proper rate, and if you don't stop at certain times, at certain depths, to give your body time to adjust, it doesn't matter all the equipment that you have, it'll kill you. So I mean, their regulations are there for a reason. It says, for a tent was prepared in the outer part where the menorah, the table, and the presentation of the bread. This is called the holy place. Beyond the second curtain was a dwelling called the Holy of Holies. It held a golden altar of incense and the Ark of the Covenant, completely covered with gold. In the Ark was a golden jar holding the manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant. And above it, cherubim of glory overshadowing the mercy seat. But it's not now possible to speak in detail about such things. Now, we love to get focused in on the detail. Man, tell me more about all that stuff, right? I want to hear and understand more about those kind of things. But he's saying, look, that's not the most important thing that you need to know. You know, and of course, Jewish people reading the book of Hebrews would know most of that, right? They would be familiar with those kind of things. It's the Gentiles who need to know more about those kind of things. We need to understand what they mean. We need it explained to us. But again, it's not the most important lesson. The Mishkan, the Tabernacle, had these regulations that had to be followed. And it has all of these instruments to help make these things happen. But he goes on, he says, no, but these things prepared and made up, ready and functioning, the Kohanim do continually enter into the outer tent while completing the services. But into the inner one, inner tent, inner sanctuary, only once a year, the Kohen Gadol alone, and not without blood, which he offers for himself and for the unintentional sins of the people. By this, the Ruach HaKodesh makes clear that the way into the holies had not yet been revealed, while the first tent is still standing. Okay, so the priests could enter the outer court every day and to perform their duties and services. But again, how often could they go into the Holy of Holies?
Once a year.
Just once a year. On what day?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, right? Okay, so the restrictions for the Holy of Holies, is it more intense or less intense?
Yeah.
It's a lot more.
Very.
It's a lot more intense, okay? So the Spirit is telling us what? Verse 8. The Spirit is telling us something by all of these restrictions, by all of these regulations, by all of the veils of separation. The purpose of the restrictions, the purpose of the veil. When Moses, he built the tabernacle, when Solomon built the temple, or when it was rebuilt, they put the veil because, what reason? The way in had not yet been revealed. The way into the presence of God has not been shown yet. So why was the veil in the temple torn from top to bottom at the crucifixion?
Because it was finished. It
Because
said
the
so
way
from
in-
the cross.
The way in had been revealed. This is the way to show his people that the way into his presence, into his eternity, into his heaven, in such a way that you will not be destroyed but live. That's been finally demonstrated. That's been finally shown to everybody. John chapter 3 uses the same kind of language. So why was the veil torn in the temple from top to bottom? To show his people the way in his presence. Okay? John chapter 3, it says, if you do not believe the earthly things I told you about, again, he's using that kind of language, how will you believe when I tell you about the heavenly things? No one has gone up into heaven except the one who came down from heaven, the Son of Man. Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the desert, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. We couldn't handle this at the garden because we were broken. Only in the Son of Man being lifted up, being shown and put on display like the serpent in the desert, if you believe in what he has done for you, the way that he has just shown, that is your way into the presence of God. And you can experience that and live because of what he has done. The Son of Man has been lifted up, and all who look to him will live. The way in has been revealed by the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. Because no one comes to the Father except through him. Right? That's what it's about. If you come by Yeshua, if you come in Yeshua, if you come through Yeshua, you can come to the Father and live. And if you try to come by the Mishkan, if you try to come by just the temple, even the rebuilt temple that everyone is getting so interested in, right? If you try to come that way, are you going to get in?
No.
No, you're not.
They're going to put that veil right back up.
Because all those regulations are, as Hebrews 9 says, they are a symbol for the present time, for this world, this day, this age in which we are living. Accordingly, gifts and sacrifices are being offered, or in our future will be offered, that cannot make the worshiper perfect with respect to conscience. Right? All the sacrifices at some temple in our future that everybody gets so fascinated by, which is interesting, but they're going to start going through all these procedures, and guess what? It's still not going to do it. It's still not going to take care of things.
It wasn't for salvation.
It wasn't for salvation, right? So it goes on, verse 11. When Messiah appeared as the Kohen Gadol of the good things that have now come, passing through the greater and the more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this creation, he entered into the Holy of Holies once and for all, not by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, having obtained this eternal redemption. Okay, for the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer, how many of y'all have seen the news reports about the red heifer being found, or been seeing that the last several years, that they have candidates?
Wait till it gets to a certain age to see if it's got to be white on it.
Exactly. So, but those are all still things that people talk about. Ooh, they found one, right? But he says, none of those things, the ashes of heifer, sprinkling those who have been defiled, sanctify for the cleansing of the flesh. Those things are not going to cut it. Those things are not going to provide the way in to the Father's presence. But he says, how much more will the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, will cleanse our conscience from dead works to serve the living God. See, that's where we're at. All these things that are fascinating us, all those things that are in the news, they may be interesting, they may be fine, they may be helping us to understand the Word of God and the reasons for why certain things happen, but they in themselves are not the issue.
Not the end all.
We can get so bogged down in little details of things like that and get so sidetracked from the real important agenda, which is Messiah. Only Yeshua can cleanse our conscience. Only Yeshua is the revealed way into the presence of God. Only Yeshua gives us the ability to serve the living God. Only Yeshua makes us holy and allows us to go into the Holy of Holies, into the presence of God. The true tabernacle of the Father is the body of the one who tabernacled among us. See how all these things are connected? It is only the sacrifice, the lifting up of that tabernacle of his body, that a way is made, and the veil, hello, that's different. Didn't expect that to get a phone call, sorry about that. And to have it go to speaker. But hey, but it's his work on the cross, it's his work and his sacrificial death that has made the way, and that's the reason why the veil is torn. Only Yeshua can clear it. Only he can give us the ability. See, I didn't realize I had all these. Hebrews 10 says, by his will we have been made holy through the offering of the body of Messiah Yeshua once and for all. Indeed, every priest, every Cohen stands day by day serving and offering the same sacrifices again and again, which can never take away sin. It can never fully and completely deal with the problem. It can only temporarily cover our sin. But it has to be done again.
That's because animals cannot be a willing sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know good from evil, and they cannot say, I will stand in their place.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be the same in the,
And they're not of equal value.
it'll be the same in the millennial too.
Yeah.
It doesn't deal with the heart.
It doesn't fix the problem. But he says, on the other hand, when Yeshua offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God, waiting from then on until his enemies are made a footstool for his feet. For by one offering he has perfected forever those being made holy. So we have been made holy. I think this one said, where did he say that? By his will we have been made holy. That's in what tense? Past. That's kind of a past tense statement, isn't it?
Have been, yes.
We have been made holy, and we are perfected forever those who are being made holy. Is that past tense?
No, it's present.
That's kind of an ongoing kind of a tense. It's a continuing kind of a tense. So we have been made holy in the past, and every day that we live forward, going to these moments, leading up to that moment, we are still being made holy. His sacrifice is still taking care of the sin, whereas in the old system, it would cover it temporarily, but you'd still have to do it again. This one, we are not only made holy and covered, we are continually made holy. So therefore, brothers and sisters, what's the benefit?
We get to thank our sacrifice.
We have boldness to enter into the Holy of Holies by the blood of Yeshua. Because what's not in the way anymore? The veil is not in the way. The wall, that separation, is not there anymore to stop us. We have boldness. So we're not having to go in fear and trepidation as like, oh man, I sure hope I make it out. Right? We have boldness to enter the Holy of Holies by the blood of Yeshua. He inaugurated a new and living way for us through the curtain, through the veil, that is his flesh. This is the mechanism, his sacrifice, his offering. We also have a high priest, a Kohen Gadol, over God's household. So then, let us draw near. Isn't that what he's always wanted? It's what he's always wanted, to be able to draw near to his children. And so we can draw near and not be in fear of annihilation, but we can draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with heart sprinkled clean from all an evil conscience and the body washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the unwavering confession of hope, for he who promised is faithful. Have they received it yet? Have we received it yet? No, because we still are hoping for it, right? If you hope, that means you have not yet seen it or received it.
We're still walking by faith.
We're still walking by faith and not by sight. So, but what can we hope in? We hope in the fact that he who promised is faithful and he will do it. That word boldness, is some of the definitions are freedom in speaking, unreservedness, without concealment, without ambiguity, a free and fearless confidence. See this? The tabernacle and everything we are reading about here reveals the heart of God, that he actually doesn't want any barriers and separations between us. And he understands that they've got to exist now for our sake, but his goal and what he is doing is that nothing will hinder his children from coming to him. And related to that, that there will be no walls and barriers and separations between his people. Right? There's a wall between us and God, and we put up our own walls between each other. So his goal is that there won't be a wall between Jew and Gentile either. That we will be like the tabernacle, made of many parts and pieces, but how many tabernacles are there? That the tabernacle is echad. The tabernacle is one. That we will be one just as he is one. That we will be like the tabernacle made of many parts, one spiritual temple. That is our future. That's where we are going. We are being made into pillars into his temple. That's one of the things that the scriptures talk about. We sing songs like heaven came down and what filled our soul?
Glory.
Glory. How is that possible? Because we have been cleansed. Right? If his glory is to come down without being cleansed, again, we're done. The only way heaven can come down is if what's been here is restored to that place where he can dwell. Right? Like it was back in the garden. This is our future. Because what also descends from glory to the earth because the King has made a way. Isn't it the whole New Jerusalem? That is because things are cleansed by his offering, his sacrifice. The King has made a way. We have been set free by his power, by his glory, by his love, that desire, the heart of God to be close to his children. We have been set free to be a tabernacle for his glory. We are ones that are bought with a price. Are we not? Redeemed and rescued by the blood of Messiah. That's where we're at. That's why these kind of things are important. Because they reveal the heart of God. They reveal what his desire truly is for his people.